see you, but I don't hear you.
Hello, 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 hello. Yeah, I know you can see me. I'll bring you on in a minute.
Okay.
Let me get this started.
All right. I'm here.
Hello, 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 hello. We are back live. We are back live. And what we're going to do, we're going to watch a little bit of this. The president is making his, while you come in here, the president is making his inaugural address. He's been sworn in. We actually had a vice president sworn in before that. And so I tell you what, we're going to watch a little bit. I want you all to call in and talk to us here. But I have with me at this 11 o'clock hour, you know, we had a great guest out of New Hampshire at the 9 o'clock hour, and she did reparations. We still have about 2 minutes until the 11 o'clock hour before we go live with our guest. So we've got him up. And I tell you, you're going to be excited. You're going to be informed. We've got this young man. He is the whole lot of things to a lot of people. And we've got 1 minute, so let me get ready to bring him on. But we'll bring him on in a minute.
Restless, optimistic, and set our sights on the nation we know we can be and we must be. I thank my predecessors of both parties for the presence here today.
All right, all right. We are here. We are here. We are here, and I am here. It is 11:59. Look, why don't you all get ready? I'm going to turn down my television here. I'm actually watching, so I'm going to be counting on my audience here to tell me and keep me informed of what's going on. You know, I want to make sure if Biden decides he's going to give us a couple of $100,000 in reparations, that you all let me know, that you all let me know so that I can pick up my check. Is that all right? But we are going to be inviting here for this. I see you signing in. Come on, Facebook. Come on. I see you. Oh, we're gonna talk this this hour. We had a great first hour. I mean, it was just a great. We had Brenda Lett on out of New Hampshire, and she went over H.R. 40, and she went over the reparations, and she did a lot of good things. Hey, I see you, Gloria. I see you, Mike Wiley. I see you, Mitzi. I see you, Gal. Oh, you all are coming in. That's right. Come on in. Come on in. Share this. Come on in. This hour, 11 o'clock hour. It is 11 o'clock. We're going to bring now Dr. Felix Davis. Dr. Felix Davis, there he is. You can see him on the screen there. Dr. Felix Davis, we're bringing him in. Young man that I go back a long time with, very good brother in the ministry, friend. We've been co-workers, we've been friends, we've been brothers. Our wives are really good buddies, really good. You know, my wife can't keep up with his wife because I don't have his kind of money. But you know, but we are so excited. We are so excited just to have him here today. We're going to talk a little bit about the community. We're going to talk a little about race, religion, and politics. And, you know, we did this today because it's the inauguration. And there are certain needs that we have. And we're going to talk about community and everything else, too. There are certain needs that we have in our community. And one thing I've known about Dr. Davis is he's been committed. You know, it's just something about it. He tells his story about growing up on the west side of Chicago and how you grow up on the west side of Chicago. Well, the west side of Chicago was the east side. That was penthouse to me. I grew up in Arkansas. So that, you know, when I came from Arkansas to the west side, I felt like George Jefferson when he was moving on up. But he talks about growing up on the west side of Chicago. But we actually went and did CITC together, and we started to give back in the community. And I asked him to come and co-host with me, so that he can share some knowledge and just share some information with us. Look, you want to join this conversation, the number's right there on the screen, 312-798-9352. That's 312-798-9352. I envision that this hour we would be talking about race, religion, and we would be talking about community, and we would be talking about politics, and I would like to hear what he want to, what his expectation is from this Biden-Harris administration, what he's looking for, and what we need. But I'm going to let him first introduce himself. So why don't you go ahead on, Dr. Davis, and tell us a little bit something about yourself, and give our viewers a little bit.
Amen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Amen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you and your guest. I am so honored, and thank you for thinking of me and having me as your guest this morning. My name is Felix Davis. Some people refer to me as Dr. Davis. As you mentioned, I'm a West Side boy, born and raised here in Chicago, and first and foremost, the title that I'm most likely to be identified with is a servant. I'm a servant of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So I'm excited to be here to talk about the things we're talking about, religion and politics. I know some people believe in a separation of state and church, but that's not realistic. I'm a Black man in America, and you cannot separate my belief from my culture and the environment in which I live in. So I'm excited to be a part of this event and talk about the change and expectations and the things that we should look from our leaders, local and higher level government, such as the inauguration and things we're seeing today. So thank you for having me, and you let me know which direction you want to go.
Well, you know, we are our president now. I can say that he's not the president-elect. Our president is making his inaugural address, and do you have any expectations for him, for us in our community?
Absolutely. As citizens of this country, we should have expectations from every elected leader. Considering what we've seen for the last 4 years and the last 400 years, we as citizens should expect from him. I personally expect him to look at the current environment and make change. We know that we're living in a pandemic right now. There has been little done. 400,000 plus people have died, and yet here we are. We know statistically, this is not made up data. This is not false reports, that a large percentage of that is minorities, including us as African Americans. So I'm expecting an immediate plan and response to help address the pandemic, not just in the Black community, but we cannot be excluded from those plans. We've seen the rollout of the vaccination. We've seen how that's being done, but where is the direct plan to help implement it into our community? So I'm looking forward to our new leadership, how they plan to roll those things out. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. But that's, I think, an immediate response that we're dealing with as a culture. Okay. Well, most definitely. So we have to have some expectation from him. Look. The way that the political spectrum runs, to the victor gives the spoils, right? And whenever you win, you always take care of those that gave you the victory. You know, even when they play the Super Bowl, there will be a Super Bowl MVP, most valuable player. They say this is the guy that actually responsible for us doing what we did, right? And when they do now. There's no doubt Joe Biden was on the ropes, and the South Carolina congressman Jim Coburn came out and pulled Kim Clyburn came out and pulled Black people together, and they took Joe Biden off the ropes and put him in the driver's seat. And God forbid, and I want to talk about Stacey Abrams a little bit later too, right? But then you take people like Stacey Abrams that you know, she didn't get mad. She organized. She got cheated out of a race, right? So there's no doubt, and I don't want to say this as to push off
against our Hispanic brothers or our Asian American brothers or even our Caucasian brothers, brothers, because I don't. But it was the black vote that put Joseph Biden in the White House. There's just no doubt about it. It was the black vote that put Joseph Biden in the White House. So we have a right to have expectations. We've delivered. Now we need him to deliver.
Absolutely, unequivocally. And furthermore, not only do we need him to deliver, we need him to address some systemic issues that exist in our country and in our culture. We can look at the recent response of the terrorist attack on our Capitol. And when you take time and look at that and look at all the photos and the images and the videos, and you see the response that was given in that time frame, we see fences and things of that sort. But if we were to take the comparison and take time and go back and look at what happened in Ferguson when Mike Brown was killed, they had tanks that came out when the people of color were protesting the death of Mike Brown. Tanks and grenade launchers shooting out different types of chemicals to cause those people to disrupt. And the population, if I believe, in Ferguson is approximately 20,000 people. But when you look at Washington, D.C., it has a population in excess of 5 million people. You mean to tell me that Washington, D.C. doesn't have tanks? They don't have the same suppression material that they have in Ferguson? They absolutely do.
Oh, yes.
So the question now becomes, why was the response in the Capitol so different than what happened in Ferguson?
Come on.
That's a precedent. We need to look at that. We need to ask this administration to help us understand that and be accountable for it and acknowledge it. And how do we move forward in unison to help one another and not continue to disrupt and ignore the African American community to the point you're making. We are a major contribution, as you mentioned, Jim Clyburn and Stacey Abrams. They are our MVPs. So we don't even need to count. If this administration doesn't acknowledge them for their efforts, it's up to us as a community to make sure we acknowledge them as our MVPs in this election.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Now, you know what got me excited about Joe Biden is that he started talking about student loan forgiveness. You know, when he started talking about student loan forgiveness, I kind of wanted to go back to the Daley years, during our Daley years when they used to vote 3 and 4 times. I'm like, man, how many votes do I have that I can give to him when he started talking about student loan forgiveness? But that is that is real. We have expectations, but what I like about him is I think he understands that we have expectations of him, because one of the first things he said is I'm going to address domestic terrorism. I'm going to go and address domestic terrorism. Well, a large part of the response that you just referenced, how they responded to the protesters in Ferguson, as opposed to how they responded to the people who, the seditionists. I won't call them protesters. I will call them seditionists who tried to coup in Washington, D.C., right? They handled the people in Ferguson as if they were domestic terrorists. They handled the seditionists in D.C. as if they were the next door neighbor coming to dinner. Right? And so there's no justice there. And don't tell me to move on and to go on there was no justice there. I like what President Biden said, and I can call him president right now because, if I could sing a little bit, I'd sing that song, Trump is gone. Yeah. But I like what he said. He said they are going to address domestic terrorism. Black people in this country have been telling white people that domestic terrorism was a problem ever since the Klan was riding at night with sheets on their head, riding up and down the street and terrorizing our communities. We said domestic terrorism, they are terrorists. They need to be treated like that. The Aryan Nation, the Ku Klux Klan, all these other things. And America didn't do that, right? But then these same domestic terrorists, they turned their attention a little while. They just turned their attentions away from black America to people that was in the Congress and people, and that is primarily majority white America. Now all of a sudden, it's domestic terrorism, and it needs to be dealt with. It should have been dealt with a long time ago.
Absolutely and unequivocally. A person who I really respect, she's a very accomplished sister. Condoleezza Rice once made a statement, and forgive me, this may not be the exact quote, but she made a statement something along the lines of, I think America was born with a birth defect, is how she kind of referring to slavery and things of that sort. And I really respect her and what she's done and what she's accomplished. But I have to disagree. I don't, because a birth defect is something that's uncontrollable. But what we're seeing and experiencing in our country is a purpose decision, a structure that was put in place, and it is continued to be put in power by those with those positions and access. And it's up to us to stay involved and be involved with the mind of Christ to address these issues. So we need to not only have expectations for this new inauguration, for these new leaders, but we need to hold them accountable. So when they make those campaign promises and we see that they're falling short of that, it's up to us to use our processes and the available tools to us to remind them of those promises and hold them accountable for them as well. So I look forward to what this administration has said and looking at what they do as they go forward.
Okay, I've got a few comments here, and you can call in and join the conversation, 312-798-9352. The number's right there on your screen, 312-798-9352. 9352. I see Michael Wiley say, he said African American community has always supported him and that he promised he would not forget it. That being said, it is on us to hold him to that promise. That's exactly what you said there, Dr. Davis. We've got to, one thing that we said, Obama didn't do anything for the black community. We never went to him and said, Obama, this is what we want you to do for the black community. So hopefully we've gotten it together today. Lenard Razor said communities, reparations, student loan cancellations. Let's start there. That's a good place to start. Gloria Harden, yes, we do. Regina, amen, amen. I'm reading some of the comments here before I ask you the next question, because the next question is a doozy. Mike Wiley said, replying to Lenard Razor, replying to Mike, I'm really surprised he didn't find a spot for Stacey Abrams in his cabinet. Well, I don't know that he did not find a spot for Stacey Abrams, or Stacey Abrams did not want a spot. Maybe she want to get the position that she rightfully won a couple of years ago as governor of Georgia, and just waiting. Time will tell, right? But I think Stacey Abrams, there's an open door to the White House at any point in time that she wants to go there. Now my next question, because you said something that took my mind out, and we're watching as Joseph Biden, he's made his inaugural address. Why don't you all call in and tell us, what do you think? What did he say? What did he say that raised a flag in you? What did he say that made you think he's going to be the best president, better than the last president he had, or what did he say that make you think he's going to be worse than what we've had? Right? Call in 312-798-9358. But you mentioned, Dr. Davis, I'm back. You mentioned that we should do this in prayer, right? I was watching a video of the siege, the people that raided the Capitol and siege, right? And they went in, first of all, they built a hanging platform outside of the Capitol. Now that immediately took me back to the days of 1920s and 30s and even the 50s and 60s. They did a hanging platform. Then they raised up Bibles, holy Bibles, and then they proceeded into the they proceeded to take over the Capitol. They, under the banner of the Holy Bible, they murdered policemen, beating policemen with flagpoles, with fire extinguishers, all under the banner of Jesus, all under the banner of Christianity, holding the Bible up. You say pray. And we've got to do this praying. when they got into the Capitol, and they actually prayed. And now, and I've got their prayer. I don't have the ability to play it right now, but they thank God for his white light and his white power that was in the room. These are words that they used as they were praying. His white light, his white power. So this brings me to this point, Dr. Davis. We're praying, they're praying. We say we're Christians. They say they're Christians. Where's the disconnect?
Yeah, the disconnect is that we as Christians, when I'm saying we as Christians need to know and understand God's word and understand that there has always been those false prophets. So when they're holding up their Bibles, there were also those that were holding crosses. When I saw the crosses, I didn't think of Jesus and the crucifixion. I thought of the same thing, the crosses that were burnt in my ancestors' front yard to reflect something other than God. So just because someone says they are of God does not make them be of God. So we have to know and understand and acknowledge that and be prepared for it. So it's important that we're understanding that this is a spiritual battle. That, yeah, they are calling on a God, but they're not calling on the God. It's just not that doesn't line up with scripture. Therefore, we know and understand and we acknowledge and we hold them accountable. We acknowledge that and we look for the system that's in process. So we as Christians don't advocate violence for anybody, but we do not stand by and let someone just simply take advantage of us. So we need to take the legislation process that's available to us and make sure that this administration not only deals with the economic issues we've talked about, financial aid or loan forgiveness and the COVID and things of that sort, but we also need to expect them to take care of us as a people. Recently, there was a young Caucasian female that attacked a 14-year-old boy because she thought he had stole her cell phone. Mm-hmm. She was able to leave that facility, driving her car on the way home. According to the news article, they tried to pull her over, said they couldn't pull her over. She was caught at home and finally later arrested. One of the news articles says they weren't sure what she was going to be charged with. That's a problem. That's a systemic problem in our country and in our culture, because we have young African-American males that are being gunned down. George Floyd kneeled on him till he died, choked to death. But yet this young lady, they couldn't pull her over. Mm-hmm. That's a reflection of the culture and the systematic racism that exists in this country. So we need to unite as a people and stop fighting so much amongst ourselves and begin to address these issues with the people that are in position and place. And when they don't give us what they say they're going to do, we need to hold them accountable and not wait till after the fact and say what they didn't do. But while they're in office, we need to unify, come together as a people, and let them know where we stand with these issues.
Okay. You hit a theme that our morning co-host hit also, and that was on unity. We've got to stand together. We've got to stand together. We've got to stand together. We've got to stand together, and we've got to come together. I also made the statement this morning that anything that occurs is going to have to come through the church, because this is the heartbeat of the black community is the church, and this is where every piece of success that we've experienced has had some type of roots or grounded in the church. But the black church is in turmoil, not because of COVID, but it's in turmoil. And as we look and we see what's going on, how can we in the church take our rightful place at the forefront of this battle, at the forefront of this knowledge transfer, the forefront of taking 2 steps up and going forward? What do we need to be doing? What do we need to be doing in the church?
Absolutely. And let me start by acknowledging Dr. King's birthday that just passed. We thank God for all of what he did and the commitment, and not just him, but all of those that contributed during the civil rights era. But the fact that this country has acknowledged him with a national holiday is a small step forward. But we still, as we just talked about, we still got a long way to go. As you've identified, the church has always been central to the African American community. We have to know and understand our history and make sure that we, as the church, are involved. The according to research, the young African American community, there is a mass exodus from the church. And we need to take time and analyze that and ask ourselves why. What is it that the church is not attractive to the young African American community as it has been historically? And look at that. We need to bring them into the fold. We need to be at the table with these young people and engaging with them and help them understand. Because the truth of the matter is, I've had conversations with some young people that they foresee that the church is not as relevant as it has been. And when we look at this, you talked about it, that there is somewhat of a divide within the African American church. We have to begin to unify. We have a common cause, the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we need to leverage that to come together in unity and begin to address the issue. The scriptures tell us, occupy until he comes. There is no such thing as separation of state and church. I understand what they're talking about from a political standpoint, but I'm a Christian in this body, in this world. I cannot separate my belief system from the system in which I live. So we need to unify as people, come together, talk to our young people, understand their concerns and hurt. We wonder why the issues are in our community. I don't care what kind of animal you are, if you back it up into a corner, it will fight.
That's
it
a
will
good point. Very good point.
Scrap. It will come out swinging. And what we're seeing right now today, the issues in our community are not, black people are bad. That's a false number that people want us to believe. And Dr. King talked about it, that riots and these type of things we're seeing are a symptom of the issues of this country. So we need to unify as believers in Christ and help our young people and hold people accountable.
Well, I want to stick there, but I think Sister Regina is making a comment, and I think we need to discuss this comment. And I'm gonna read her comment, and I want you to give your response first. I'll come after you. But she said, I believe that the black community is responsible for the conditions of our neighborhoods because we gave up on ourselves. We took government handouts over working for a living, educating ourselves and keeping our neighborhoods clean and keeping up. So we took government handouts over educating ourselves and keeping our neighborhoods together. We sold our village for a government check. We chose a once-a-month check that didn't require an education of self-respect, integrity, and love for our own to get. What do you think about that?
I understand the perspective, but I don't agree.
Okay, I didn't think you were going to agree. Come on.
Absolutely, unequivocally, I don't agree. As I alluded to, I'm a Christian. I love as God has instructed me to. But back me in a corner and see what will happen. When we look at our culture and we evaluate where we're at and how we did not build the projects. We did not establish the system. In the 80s, they established minimum mandatories. The crack cocaine era popped out, where if a person was caught with a vial of crack cocaine, they implemented a minimum sentence of X number of years in prison. Mm-hmm. While our white counterparts could be caught with twice as much of the same product, just in a different format called cocaine. Mm-hmm. But yet they didn't have mandatory minimums. See, there is a system that was put in place purposely that has affected our community and put us to where we're at. We are not the ones we didn't bring cocaine into the black community. It was brought there by others. Did we contribute to it by? Absolutely, there's some part to be held accountable. But we are not the cause of the problem. We didn't make ourselves sick in that scenario. So I understand that perspective, but I respectfully and totally disagree that there are process. there are more Caucasian people on aid than black people, has been and always has been. But yet in the 80s, they took an African American female and put her on the front of the newspaper and portrayed her as the mother of aid
Yes, they
in this
did.
country.
Yes, they did.
That is not an accurate picture. Our history has been whitewashed so that we see ourselves as destitute. That is not the case.
Okay, and here's my point. I understand exactly what she's saying, but I think you're right. We go a little bit deeper into that. Black people, black people have come have become experts at surviving. And that's what it is. You know, we become experts at surviving. So if we couldn't get a job, and I'll give you a good example. When me and my wife first got married, all of her resumes were still in her maiden name, Jeanette McClendon. Jeanette McClendon. Well, if you didn't know, you think she was Irish. And so she had sent out these resumes, and she actually got an interview at a law firm downtown, right? And she goes down there, and she's in there for a long time. She goes down there, and I'm asking her after, why did it take so long? She said, well, when I went in, the people were walking back and forward. They just, I don't know, thought she was a male person or something, or just, they finally asked her, who her name, Jeanette McClendon? And then, then they went back up in there for a while, and they came back, and then they gave her basically a patronage interview to let the basic, and then they couldn't believe that Jeanette McClendon was a black woman. Now, why am I saying that? If you can't get a job and you have to survive and you don't want to become a criminal, then you have to qualify yourself for the government check. And because of redlining, because black people did not have access to capital, and because when we were successful, like at Black Wall Street in Tulsa, and all these places, even Chicago had black financial district. When we were successful, we had it wrested away from us, forcefully taken, violated. I drove from my house to the church locally one day. I took hosted. By the time I got here, I had tears in my eyes just looking at what I was seeing from my house to here. But my thought was I didn't think it was these people that are just out on the streets, or these people don't want a job, or these people don't. My thought was, what if our ancestors had gotten paid for the labor they did? They could have accumulated houses, land, and wealth, and passed it down to their descendants and kept wealth in the family. What if that could have happened in the black community? You wouldn't see the devastation in our community. So what we are witnessing and what we are viewing is really the output of systemic racism. It's the output of that, right? And it started when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, and Abe Lincoln signed the order that would give the freed slaves up to 40 acres and a mule. And then they assassinated him, and Andrew Johnson rescinded that and took back the land that had been given to the few black people that they had already started doing, took it back, right? From that, for me, from that point on, there was a system in place to create black communities like this, right? So if you gotta feed your babies and yet you can't get a job, then what are you going to do? You're going to either do something criminal or you're going to qualify for what they'll give you legally if you can't do that, because you're thinking, I've got to feed my babies. That's what I'm thinking about, right? And that's what I have to do. So when I look at what's happening, I don't see black people. There's no reason why we can't take it. We can't keep up what we have. But look at what's happening now. Now you've got black communities in devastation because the older people have gotten old. That's all, and they can't keep up their houses. They can't. But look at what we're not looking at. They don't get a huge Social Security check. They don't get huge checks like that in their old age. Why? Because they were discriminated against in the early ages. When they were wage earners, they should have been earning a fair wage. They wasn't earning a fair wage. It wasn't until the 70s that Social Security was even taken out of domestic workers' pay. They didn't pay. There was nothing, because for what it's worth, and we like to ring the bell for FDR. Franklin, he implemented Social Security. Social Security implementation was not geared toward black people. From the very incision. As a matter of fact, from the very incision, the sharecroppers were left out of it. They were not part of it. The domestic workers were left out of it. They were not part of it. And so what happened was, these people took their wages and they bought houses and they kept them houses up. But then as they got older, they hadn't put in the Social Security because they didn't have it. It was not geared toward them. And so if you can have a house. If the roof leaks, what are you going to do? You don't have the money to do it. You don't have the money to come in. You can't do it. People aren't going to do it free. So they become victim of predatory practices within our neighborhood, within our community. So what I'm seeing, Sister Regina, I understand exactly what you're saying. We need to do better with what we have. But we always got to call a spade, and we always got to identify the source of the problem. You can always put a Band-Aid on the problem, or you can actually put some antiseptic and stitch it up so that it'll heal. And I think we need to go for the long-term healing in this regard, right? There's a lot more, we can do. Keep our neighborhoods clean and keep with a lot of, yes. But a lot of this is the output of a system that has worked comprehensively and has worked in a sequence to keep us in a inferior state. That's what I'll say.
Absolutely, unequivocally, and you hit on a lot of key notes. Not only is it a system that was historically put in place to do that to the African American community, it's a system that still exists and continuously evolves to do that. So when the food stamp process was put in place and African Americans became a part of that contribution, and again, I remind the listeners that there are more of other than African American people. African American people are not the leading recipients of food stamps or SNAP or whatever we call it today. Check the statistics on that. Let's start there. Secondly, what they put in place in addition to that was when African Americans were receiving those food stamps, if a mother was receiving that, she could not have specific males in her home anymore. Mm-hmm. That's a systematic decision to break up the African American home. Mm-hmm. So that now you not only have someone that's a recipient of it, they become attached to it. You can't work X numbers of hours. You talk about Social Security. If you're receiving Social Security, then you're limited on number of hours you can work. That's a systematic process that is put in place. Not only does that process existed then and now, but then when African Americans did develop middle class, you talked about Rosewood and Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, Chicago. Those things were raped and pillaged. They were stripped from the Black African American community. The middle class in this country was primarily developed from unions. That when this country unionized, the middle class grew statistically and exponentially. But the big part that we need to also be aware of, African Americans were restricted from being members of the union.
Yes, they
So
were.
now you've got a middle class that's developing with a systematic process to exclude a specific group of people, us. So we need to understand, do we have an accountability to raise our families, take care of our communities, and do those things? Unequivocally, absolutely yes. But understand that there are system and procedures in place that when we do that, when we do our part, they make sure that seems to be stripped away. I know in the community that I grew up with, I know of a mother who worked her way through life to the point she was able to acquire multiple two flat buildings on the west side of Chicago. But with gentrification, with redlining, with taxes, every one of them, and I believe it was approximately 6 different properties that a single mother was able to acquire over years, are all gone, no longer part of that family's ownership. Why? Gentrification, taxes, things of that sort. Where the system recognized the value of that property because of its vicinity to downtown Chicago, and they decided they wanted that property back. So they just didn't outright take it like they did Tulsa and Rosewood. So in the new environment, or what we now call the new Jim Crow, there's a book that I recommend everyone look at, The New Jim Crow. And understand what's taking place here. That prisons are built on.
You're kind of breaking up a little bit.
African American male birth in this country.
Okay, you kind of broke up a little bit there toward the end now. Yeah, you're breaking. We're gonna come back to Mr. Davis here in a moment. We're going to come back to Mr. Davis here in a moment. He's kind of breaking up. Maybe if you can move around a little bit. It looks like your video is freezing a little bit, and it's kind of going there. But he makes a very good point while we work to get him back. He makes a very good point that he tells a story about when the system understood and the system realized the value of the property, it worked to take that property away from that person, right? Or work because they wanted the property.
Most appropriately.
You know, they wanted the property. So let's go back. Let's just sound like
we're in.
Yes. Hello, are you there? Yeah. Well, no. So let's just come back here for right now. We'll give him a chance to get that together. Dr. Eddie Phillips say once we knew the power of the vote, but we once knew the power of the vote. But conditioning and psychological minimization has caused us to ignore our own history and focus on the wealth of the white
there's
as opposed to the advancement of our own culture. We think black wealth of knowledge and money have to be comparative. We have to know our worth and use it to push change. Now, I while he's there, I want to take this and break this down into a couple of statements because a few things that it just jumps right out to me. The first thing is we once knew the power of the vote, but conditioning and psychological minimization has caused us to ignore our own history and focus on the wealth of the white as opposed to the advancements of our own cultures. We once knew the power of the vote. You know, it's been very well documented that the power of the vote for black people, I think in the past, the power of the vote has been a lot, has accomplished a lot. And we have accomplished a lot just with the power of the vote. So then what happens is you see a lot of black people, or you hear a lot of black people now that say, I ain't no use in me even voting. There's no need. There's no need in me voting. There's no need in me and me vote. My vote don't count. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to go out there. I think that changed. That changed in this last election. In this last election, I think you saw the black people get out and vote and do that. So I think just the knowledge of the power of our vote, we once knew it. I think that's caused that is coming back. And as far as we started to ignore our own history and focus on the wealth of the whites as opposed to advancement of our own culture. And you know what? Now, you could preach that because I see the system, I see the outputs of that, and I see the realization of that in the black church. The black church was very good when we were focused on the advancement of our people spiritually, naturally, physically, economic. We were focused on. Now the black church has become basically just like the other church. We're focused on money. You know, that was in the early days. You didn't have really what you call black mega churches. No, you had black community churches. There were white mega churches, but you didn't have black mega churches. You had white, because the black church was more than just a place of worship. So it wasn't just somewhere you came on Sundays. It was somewhere you came to fight for human rights during the week. It was somewhere you came for your social gathering on the weekend. It was somewhere you came as a school during the weekday, right? So the black church was more than just a place of worship. But now I've seen the focus of the black church actually move to where it's not so much the place of worship now, it's the place of bringing in a bunch of people. That inherently means that I get a bunch of money into the building, and then I can do a bunch of things like, and I can live lavishly, just like the CEO or the executives. And I think that has been the output, is that we've seen that has been one result and one clear-cut decision where we've seen that we've started looking at the wealth of other people, and we start to put that as our goals, instead of having goals of actually making our community better and making our people better. And Brother Eddie, I think a large part of the reasoning for that is because somewhere between the LBJ's signing the civil rights legislation and Kamala Harris becoming the first black female vice president, somewhere in between there, black people said, okay, we have made it. We've arrived. And so that focus changed from being a community-based focus of helping our community and building our community and equality. The focus changed, and we started to shoot for wealth just like everybody else. And that has inherently been contributed to the demise of our community. And then as I continue with your statement, you said, we think black wealth of knowledge and money has to be comparative. And well, most definitely. And it's almost not only do we think it's comparative, we almost think that it's almost opposite of a zero-sum game, right? You can't be knowledgeable and wealth, or wealth of knowledge and money. You can't be knowledgeable and have money, or one or the other. And we see the images that are put before us are images of wealth, but the wealth typically don't come from industry or industries relative to knowledge. The wealth in the black community that's portrayed as the super wealthy are entertainers. They are athletes, right? They're not. You should have taken a person like Ben Carson and elevated him to such a level. And I'm not talking about his politics, but here's a man that was groundbreaking in medicine and did things right. He should be celebrated by the world for that. He should be celebrated, but instead they throw in front of us the money they throw is from athletics and then from entertainment, right? Not from knowledge, right? And there was a long time as a football fan, that was a long time before they actually let black people, black men quarterback football teams. Why? Because they say they don't have, the quarterback needs to have so much knowledge of the game, and he's got to be able to read defenses, and he's got to be able to make split-second decisions. And they did not believe that black people had, that black athletes had that kind of a knowledge, right? Because, and they just didn't. They put the knowledge and say, well, yeah, they've got athletic ability, but knowledge. So let's put them into some mundane position on the football field. Let's give them a running back. Just give them the ball, tell them to run. Let's put them some pass on, tell them to hit. But when it comes to making those decisions, then we need to have a white quarterback. That's what they did. And so they ended up like you ended up with seeing systematic or systemic racism within that. So what happened? You don't have a lot of black executives over corporations. They're starting to grow now. You don't have a lot of black people in Fortune 500s. Why? Because it's that thing that wealth of knowledge is in some people's mind the opposition of money. And so we've got young black brothers and young black sisters aspiring to be rappers instead of aspiring to be CEOs. They are aspiring to be great athletes. There are people that spend hours and hours and hours and hours on the basketball court practicing when they could actually benefit more spending that time studying, because the chances are better that you can actually further yourself a lot easier studying. And I'm going to say this, and I don't want to brag on my daughter. I thank God for my daughter. I don't want to brag on my daughter Amber, but Amber, when she was in high school, she was a pretty awesome basketball player. I got videotapes of her that I was looking at the other day when she was in basketball. She was a pretty doggone awesome basketball player. And for her size and for her weight, I mean, she could go in and take people down and take them into the paint, and she had a good outside shot, and she was a shooter. I mean, she could sit outside and shoot. She was doing good. And when she got to be a senior, college coaches were coming to see her. And I'm not talking major Division I university, but she had college coaches which could have gotten her an education. And we thought, great, she's not going to have to pay for college. Amber came in one day and sat down, and she sat us down, and she said, look, she said, I do not want to go to these schools on an athletic scholarship. And I'm like, what do you mean it's free? She said, I'm like, it's free. You get your education free. She said, no, I do not want to go to school, to these schools on an athletic scholarship. Well, give me your reasons why, because you're not making sense to me. She said, because these aren't major schools for one, but even if they are, she said, I'm not going to go pro. I'm not going to be a professional player. I know I'm not good enough. And even if I was, they don't make a whole lot at the time, so I'm not going to be pro. And she said, and I won't get educated. And I'm like, why wouldn't you get educated? She said, because when you go there on a scholarship, their expectation is that you're going to be in the gym working out. And I won't have time for studying. She said, so it really doesn't make sense. If I want to do something in my life, I just have to figure out a way to go to school and pay. But if I go on a college scholarship, they're going to want me in that gym. They're going to want me in the weight room. They want to want me in, and I won't have the time to study, and I need to study to make the grade. That did it for me. I'm like, whatever it takes for us to send you to school, we're going to send you to school, because that made so much sense. That made so much sense. But we've got people now that are so focused on athletics, and when the athletics don't work, then what they're doing. They're great athletes. When I spoke at a school here on 30th, just off of Ashland, and as I was going there and to speak about our program that we're teaching, the computer program. And the guy that invited me said, look, when you drove down here, you drove past people that were stars on the basketball court. They was and now what they're doing, they're standing on the street. He said they're like early 20s, if they're even 20. They're standing on the street. They need something like this because they put all those eggs in that basket, and when that basket did not pan out, when it did not produce what they thought that it should produce and would produce, then they had nothing to fall back on. And I think when we talk about education and educated, we should be teaching and showing our young people and the young folks, we should be showing them that you can actually grow and you can actually prosper and you can actually be successful with a knowledge basis, and not, it doesn't have to be athletics and it doesn't have to be entertainment, but it can be a knowledge basis. And I think if we do that, we will accomplish a lot. And you had a lot in that statement, right? We have to know our worth and use it to push change. And our worth it has a value that's actually placed upon it. The worth has a value that's placed upon it, and we have to know it. You're exactly right. That value is placed upon us by us. Don't let anybody else tell us what our value is. Don't let anybody else tell us what our worth is. We have to place that worth and we have to place that value upon ourselves. Look, Dr. Davis had some technical issues, so I'm flying by myself. If you want to call in, you can call in 312-798-9352, 318-312-798-9352. Look, I'm watching the comments on one side, and I'm watching the president as he's in the hallway somewhere on the other side. I tell you, we've got this set up today, and we've got this here set up so that we can actually talk to you all, and we want to know. I want to know from you all, what are you all looking for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to do for you? What are you looking for? What are your expectations? Just somebody call in and tell me, or somebody type it in. What are you expecting from the Joe Biden? Black people all over America are rejoicing right now. They're shouting, jumping up and down. So I want to know why the joy? Why are we so happy? Is there a different expectation? What are we looking for? While somebody call in, let me know. Eddie Phillips said, preach, we ignore the intellectual wealth for monetary wealth that is fleeting and often obtained through promise, compromise, and grift. You're exactly right. We do. And I look at that when we say we ignore our own history and focus on the wealth of the whites as opposed to the advancement of our own culture. And that's pretty much what the focus of their wealth, of them, has been wealth. I mean, when we look at it, we've heard over and over that Donald Trump did not understand that people would go and fight in the army and not get anything out of it. I think he said to his one chief of staff whose son died in the military service, and said he died for nothing. If there was no monetary gain out of it, if there was no ROI, some return on that investment, then he didn't see it. He didn't understand it. And that seems to be the way that we are falling and acclimating and pointing in the church, and that has been our demise. That's contributing to our demise. If we come together, if we as people we come, and I won't say once again, because I don't know that we've ever been together, right? But if we could ever get together, we can accomplish a whole lot. We can do a whole lot. And so, look, I'm excited about this. Dr. Davis is falling out. My engineer's holding up, fingers telling me I only got 5 minutes. Look, I'll be back. I'm doing an hour on, an hour off. We will be back in an hour with Dr. Eddie Phillips. And I tell you, he's coming at us. He's going to come at us, and he's going to come at us. The brother comes with knowledge. He comes with knowledge, and he comes with understanding, and he comes as a veteran of this fight. He's not someone that just showed up and decided to say a few things to make somebody happy. And so at a 1 o'clock our time, which is in an hour, he will be coming and he will be co-hosting with me. And I know he's got a lot to say. He's got a mouth full of knowledge and wisdom. And I'm looking to talk HR 40, voter suppression, Trump, Biden, Harris, the Capitol siege. I want to talk about community development, where we go from here. I want to talk about we're going to talk about the importance of knowing our history to determine our presence and to set goals for our future. So I'm going to get ready to sign off here. It is about 12 o'clock now, so Dr. Davis was not able to get his technical problems repaired. So we thank him for joining. And what we will do, we will be back in an hour. So I look forward to seeing you all in an hour, okay? Join me then. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.